going to interview Dr. John D. Gilland, Desi Gilland, who everybody's known as Desi all these years. He served as president of the State Medical Association during 1976 and 77. Now, this interview is being conducted by Dr. Laurie Brown from Charleston and Miss Monya Green from Charleston. And we are at Dr. Gilland's home in Conway on Tuesday, March 9th, 1993. Dr. Gilland, the first thing I'm going to ask you, I think, is before you took office, in your acceptance speech that was printed a month or so after you took office, you said that there were 3 chapters in your life which were important to the present time that you were taking office.
I recall that. Yes.
Now, what were those 3 chapters? We'll mention them and then get started on our full interview.
It was in 1938 when probably I attained my first and highest goal of life, of being a physician. Having attained that and walking up on the stage that night to the old, stately, dignified Dr. Robert Wilson, our then dean, he always called us Mr. So-and-so. But as he handed me the diploma, he said, Dr. Gilland. That was the first time I ever heard it officially. So I attained that goal with great delight and pleasures, reflecting on the past and looking forward to the future. The second chapter, I think, in my life was the time of marriage, recognizing the importance of marriage, its place in society, and the effect of one marital party on the life of the other. Marriage starts a whole new chapter and way of life. And I can look back now to that day of marriage with great, great satisfaction of the assistance I've received and the pleasures of having married Mary Elizabeth Dove Gilland of King Street. The third chapter, I'm going to call it my ascent to the presidency of the South Carolina Medical Association, the highest position and the position of great honor and responsibility within my profession. Having attained that, I'll let that be my last and final chapter of life.
Well, that sounds real good, but now we'll get on and sort of find out. Let me ask you where you were born, who your parents were, anything about your family of origin that you might want to tell us or mention.
I was born in Florence, South Carolina, January 17th, 1914. The first and only son of John Desiso Gilland Sr., I became a junior, and Jane Allen, my mother. I had 2 sisters. My father, an attorney, was born and grew up in Kingstree and was one of what you might call one of the old families of Kingstree. My mother, Jane Allen, was one of 9 children, born of James Allen and Julia Marshall from Charleston. She was born in Florence, and after they married, my father moved to Florence, where I was born. I grew up in the town of Florence, then around 14,000 people, small but delightful town. I went to the public school and finished high school in 1931. As a little kid, people used to say, what you gonna be when you grow up? Well, I'm gonna be a lawyer like my daddy. That's so often the response of a child. Perhaps around junior year in high school, perhaps I did a little thinking. I thought, I think I'll be a doctor. I had 3 uncles that are physicians, Dr. Allen of Florence, Dr. James McLeod, Dr. F.H. McLeod, the founder of then McLeod Infirmary, and a physician ophthalmologist uncle in New York. So there was some physicians in the family, and I decided to be a doctor. I had no idea what it entailed, but I started out on the path of pre-med at the University of South Carolina. In those days, pre-med was a 3-year course. And I went to Carolina for 3 years and had 3 very delightful years. Learned very little, but had a wonderful time. And of course, being a South Carolinian, where do you go to medical school? There's only one medical school. That's then called the Medical School of Charleston. It was the Medical College of the state of South Carolina, was its proper name at that time. And of course, I went there. An interesting feature, and my uncle Dr. Allen in Florence, he and Sile Driscoll, in charge of admissions, were classmates at the Citadel. And the story about my admission to the university is, well, it's simplified a little bit, but my uncle Dr. Allen called up Si and said, "Si, I've got a nephew that wants to go to medical college. Will you take him?" Si said, "Sure, send him down." That was my admission. That is pretty true. That's the way it was in those days. So I went down there and spent my 4 years. Very, very delightful years, hard working, but a lot of fun and pleasure. Delightful living in Charleston, too. So many of the debutantes, the Christmas parties came the night before my examinations.
I see.
But I went to them anyway. And I finished medical school in 1938. I thought then I would go through a rotating internship, which is pretty much the custom at that time. I had an idea of my specialty, but my mentor was the then young Dr. James McLeod, my first cousin, general surgeon in Florence, the finest technical surgeon I've ever seen in my life. So I decided to do general surgery. I went to New York for 3 years, then St. Luke's in Richmond, then James Walker Memorial in Wilmington. I bypassed Lenox Hill. I was in Lenox Hill in New York for a year, 5 years of postgraduate training. Then I opened up my office, private solo practice in Charlotte, 1945. That's when I entered private practice. Living outside of South Carolina, though, and being a South Carolinian at heart, and having grown up in Florence, Columbia, Charleston, I knew someone at every little crossroad. But living in Charlotte, I didn't know anyone outside of the city of Charlotte. It made a difference. Then Charlotte was perhaps 75,000 people, and I envisioned a big city. So when the opportunity arose, I came back into South Carolina, and I took the position of Chief of Surgery at Kelly Memorial Hospital in King Street. And that's where Mary Elizabeth and I renewed old acquaintances. And in a very short time, we were married there in King Street. After a period of time, though, roughly 20 months, we decided to make a move, and living in this part of the South Carolina, I wanted the coast, so we moved to Conway, 1948. And I had a private solo practice in Conway. And I enjoyed my practice until retirement in 1985.
Well, that sounds like a good experience.
It was I've had a delightful professional life and a good life outside of the profession also. Life has been good to me and my family.
Now, how much family do you and Mary Elizabeth have?
I now have 2 daughters and 5 granddaughters.
Five granddaughters.
We had a son. We had a 3rd child. Laurie, perhaps you remember.
I remember very
He
distinctly.
was killed in an automobile accident
I remember very distinctly, Desi.
the day after we installed as president.
Right.
And I still can't speak up without choking
I
up.
know.
Okay.
I know it.
Well, he was my only son, my namesake, my heir,
Yeah.
and he was the last of the Gillands.
Yeah. Well, that was a sad day for all of us. And
It changed my entire life.
certainly it did. Certainly it did.
But I have two daughters. One is living here with us now. She's 44, I think. She's a businesswoman in the world and very much interested in church and religion. We're very proud of her as a single woman. My younger daughter, Jane, she married an orthopedist right at Gilland in Georgetown. And they have 4 little girls. Beautiful little girl, I'm proud of her.
But Skinner was
Having lived a life of position, Mary Elizabeth said, if any interns or young doctors come around this hospital, take a stick and run them away. Living the life of a physician.
Yeah, right.
But Jane married right, and we're very happy that they're living in Georgetown close by.
Now, he graduated from the medical college.
From the medical university.
Medical university, yeah.
Took a special training in orthopedics and subspecialty in pediatric orthopedics. He's now in Georgetown, his hometown, in private practice there.
Well, that's real nice. Well, you're really sort of outnumbered as the male in the family now with all these daughters and granddaughters.
That's true. I was the only male in my generation. My son was the only male in his generation. So the Gilland family at the time was a large family in King Street, but there are no Gillands left in King Street.
It's amazing how life changes.
Yes, it does.
Now, let me ask you how you sort of became interested in, involved in what I'll call a term that I don't really like is organized medicine. But the administration and running of the medical end of things. How did you become involved in that? Your call?
Yes, I do, quite well. When I moved to Conway, after I joined Horry County Medical Society, South Carolina Medical Association, on the staff of Conway Hospital. And all my interests and whatever efforts I made in medical affairs did not extend beyond the boundary of Horry County. I had no interest beyond that. And that went on for several years as we carried on private practice and worked with the Horry County Medical Association. Perhaps it's because no one else wanted, but I was president for 3 consecutive years, so we were supposed to elect a new president every year. But after a period of time, I began to think a little bit outside of the borders. I began to think of the state association, and I think I became a director of the South Carolina Political Action Committee, our PAC. And my classmate and past president of the South Carolina Medical Association, Bill Perry from Chesterfield, he kind of influenced me in going statewide. Well, he did that, and he became president. We were very good friends, and I began to get a little more involved until finally I ran as councilor from the 6th District. And when I was elected councilor, of course, then I officiated in that capacity, carrying out my duties and pleasures as a councilor and getting involved in organized medicine. You gradually so-called work your way up the ladder, which I did, probably about over a period of 10 years. And maybe it was because they did not see a person in line of ascent into the presidency. I fell into that slot. And I filled some big shoes. I followed Tucker Weston into the presidency.
I don't think you just fell into that slot. You were there for a purpose, and a lot of people wanted you to be there, else you wouldn't have been there.
I appreciate that,
Yes, sir. And do you call then what some of the issues were along when you were a counselor and sort of what followed you into the state presidency?
Each year is pretty closely tied in with events of the subsequent years as activities progressed. But it was in 1976 that I became president. And for the few years before that and into my presidency, some of our issues were, and the phrase we first began using was quality medical care. We talked so much about the delivery of quality medical care. And professional liability insurance became a big issue with the rising cost of litigation and the cost of insurance premiums. We helped develop the JUA to give us that protection. And I think Strother Pope was perhaps the chairman of the Political Action Committee working in the halls of the State House to bring about legislative reform to give us some relief of the pressures and to make the issues more equitable between us all. Then I was there when Medicare and Medicaid began to become a reality. And one of the pleasures of that time was a couple of trips we made to Washington in behalf of my fellow physicians in trying to obtain equal pay for equal service. In the early days of medical care, Medicaid, there was a fee differential between metropolitan, urban, and rural. Fee payment for the same service for geographical reasons that we didn't understand and didn't approve of. So we went to Washington on 2 different occasions. The doctor, Secretary of Health, I believe his name was Matthews. And then one time we talked to Califano. That's as close as I ever got to the presidency of the United States. We started with the Secretary of Health. And we persuaded them to abolish the geographical distribution differential and go to a unified fee-for-service throughout the state of South Carolina. And at that time, we were the first state to do this, and they told us that we'd be a pilot program as the first state in the entire nation. And I think because of its success, that finally became true throughout the nation. But we were the pilot program. It was during my presidency too we began to study the reorganization of our structure of South Carolina Medical Association. And it gradually, over a couple of years of study, evolved into the change of structure into what it is now, with different titles and different organizations. Those are about perhaps the highlights, as I recall, at offhand.
There was one thing that the legislature did while you were president, I believe, in forming a disciplinary committee.
That is true. Up until that time, the State Board of Medical Examiners carried out its function, but it had no real authority to discipline those in need of discipline. And we established the Medical Disciplinary Commission and appointed it, got its declared legally so that the State Board of Medical Examiners could take proper action against those who fell out of line. And since then, they've been exceedingly active and they've helped the profession a great deal. We established a good relationship with the Blues during that time, too. As commercial carriers, they had great impact on organized medicine in South Carolina. I was on the Blue Cross Blue Shield Board for 17 years. And at that time, they had to set up the peer review committee, and the physicians participating, contract with them, and all which we participated. But we just improved the relationship with Joe Sullivan as compared to the relationship we had with his predecessor.
Yes.
And we became more cooperative, the two organizations, both of which were top flight organizations.
Now, I recall you making one statement that you were asking all physicians and everybody to try to help out in doing something. I remember you making a statement that hospital costs have run wild like a runaway train.
That sounds like a statement I may have made because we were beginning to realize then with the escalation, the terrific cost of caring for our patients. And the cost was such that the private uninsured patient had great difficulty in paying his bills. If you attained good medical insurance coverage, the premiums soared. And it did become, and it still is, and has gotten worse, into what I call our number one problem now is the cost of medical care as it has escalated.
Yes, sir.
I practiced in the old days where tonsillectomy was 35, appendix 100, gallbladder 150, hernia 125, hysterectomy 150. In those days, and it amazes me of the cost now.
Oh,
I don't know where it's going, and I don't see the end of it. So it's such a complex issue.
it's awfully complex, isn't it?
It's very complex. There's no simple solution, but it has to be resolved if we will continue to practice. I guess one of my greatest sorrows is that the cost of medical care has escalated in the hands of the bureaucrats. And we, the leaders in the overall health profession, did not take the lead as to where the medical profession has gone. With the busyness of private practice and devotion of time and effort to the patient care, we reneged on our administrative authorities nationally, and we let the bureaucrats deliver the present system in which we're now, I'm going to say, struggling. And it's because of the change in the character of the delivery of medical care that has changed your relation and attitude between physician and patient. Society has changed. Patients are part of society. Physicians are part of society, and they has changed. The bureaucratic intervention has displaced a lot of the pleasures of practice. And in solo practice, you own a one-to-one relationship with your patients. Things have changed so very much.
I believe you call that a social change, as I recall, one time when they're talking about the differences in the patient-physician relationship, which was brought about by just changes in society, I guess.
We're living in a very complex society, and society does change. And the relationship between patient and physician has changed. The loyalty they used to exhibit to their doctor has gradually been displaced by, let me have any doctor I can as quickly as I can get him. But there's not the following that there was in the olden days, which is regrettable. But it's a unique relationship you establish with the patient. There's no other type of relationship to compare with it. But as society changed and the physicians have changed, we're a part of change. But it'll never be like it used to be.
Never.
What we call the golden days of medicine. It'll never be that way again. It's
too much of a business, I think, if I can interject that a little bit. Now, what do you think, you accomplished so much during your presidency. Was there anything that you sort of would say was what would you think might be your best accomplishment while you were president of the state association? That's
Well,
difficult to say, I'm sure, but
when my drive that I would ordinarily have as president was diminished by the loss of my son, I thought of resigning. But I didn't, and I continued that year with great stress. Did not carry out many of the things that I had planned. I just couldn't perform as I wanted to. Charlie Johnson was a big help to me. He was our chief executive officer at that time. He helped me a lot. It's a very trying times in trying to perform and carry out the duties and the visitations of the president to the various county societies. So I don't know that during my watch there was any great monumental changes, but just a lot of, I'll say, smaller changes.
smaller changes, and Des, you laid the groundwork for a tremendous number of changes that came along later on.
I hope so, but changes as they are conceived and implemented often take longer than 1 year.
They're subtle.
And
Yes.
so you may to conceive of something, but it may take 1 or 2 presidencies to implement that. And if that came about, it pleases me. And I think I can reflect on some things that were conceived and initiated and came to fruition later.
Right.
But I was right along with and sandwiched between some very good presidents, both preceding and following me.
Looking over a list of committees that I had in my file during that time, you appointed some mighty good people to help on those committees. Work.
I tried to stress committee structure and organization. They are the workhorses of an organization. And I believed in committee structure, and we had some good friends and good working people in those days to carry out the intent of council. It was called council then, and I think now it's called board of directors.
Board of directors, board of trustees.
Board of trustees.
One thing I remember happened during your presidency, wasn't there some change in the dues structure? Do you recall that?
Yes, we did. Our dues might have been $110 a year, and I think through necessity and desire, we increased it maybe $220 perhaps. And of course, that met with great opposition. But with the change of times, we needed more money, we had more programs, and it takes finances to implement certain programs. And we did increase the dues at that time, and I think you'd say very successful too, with some objection, but minimal.
Right. You didn't lose many people, I don't think.
I don't think we did. We tried to maintain a continuing drive for membership, and I think that goes along with all presidencies. Well, it's inconceivable to me how a doctor, being the professional man he is, couldn't belong to his professional organization. That's like your church. If you're a Christian, you belong to a church. If you're a doctor, you belong to SCMA. They go together.
Too many people don't see that.
No, they don't.
Too many.
We tried to let those that did not participate see the advantages that we created for them. It was partially successful. We had a good organization, relatively strong. There were still too many, quote, freeloaders, end quote.
Right. There always is, though, isn't there?
They always is with an organization like that. It rides you free. But with the income that a physician has, there's no reason why he shouldn't support this state association.
Is there anything else that you can think about that you might want to add during your term as president? Anything that you can think that might be valuable in the archives about a state association would be
It was shortly before my presidency, though, and I was at the time a counselor, that we moved the offices from Florence under Jack Meadows. And that was a big move. Well, it had been in Florence for years with Jack Meadows, a part-time executive director. We moved to Columbia, which was appropriate, the central part of the state. We got a full-time executive director. Jack Meadows was a good friend. He did not want to leave his hometown
No.
Florence, so he stayed there, and we got new executive directors to help us in the administration of SCMA. It was the building program that came along too. We used to rent. Finally, we built the building next to Richmond Memorial Hospital. We were very proud of it too. Since my presidency, though, they've moved elsewhere.
Moved elsewhere. But they made a good profit on that building, enough to build another one.
They did. They
Pay off
did
the debt,
well.
I understand, and everything. So that was a good move. Now, since you're a presidency, you stayed on in the organization, of course, as past president, and then
Automatically a past president. When I delivered my farewell address, it was my intent, because of the loss of son, to probably sever all ties with medicine and just stay home. I think Tucker Weston talked me into running for alternate delegate to the American Medical Association, which I did. And I believe I was alternate delegate for a couple of years and went to the meetings for a couple of years. Whether I contributed, I don't know, but they were nice years. But then I came out of that and I quietly continued my practice until retirement.
and you retired when? What year?
1985 was my retirement. I thought that I would practice my beloved profession as long as I enjoyed it. I was in good physical health and mentally alert. But with the changing times, I decided I wouldn't. With those changing times, I so-called lost my fun. I lost the fun and pleasure of practice. So I retired while I was still in reasonably good health, rather than wait to be forced into retirement by failing health, and my wife would have to nurse me. But I missed a lot of things from private practice. I missed my nurses, which I very loved. And I missed patient relationships, and most operations were successful. I can no longer say a job well done. Most patient relationships were pleasant.
Sure.
And I miss those. But I've enjoyed my retirement. It has been nice. And now all I do is just pursue the pleasures of life.
Well, that's good. You pursued the pleasures of life all during your practice, but it was just a little different pursuit.
It was a little different, yes.
A little different pursuit.
I worked rather hard during practice. I had a lot of pleasures of the social life in my community. I enjoyed all the meetings we used to attend. We had a good life.
Good. And any particular personalities or people in the legislature or anybody that you would like to say anything about that might have been particularly helpful? I know it's awfully hard to pick out one or two people or anything, but if you have anybody that you would like to mention as being particularly helpful, you can. Otherwise, we know how much help you did have.
For a couple of years prior presidency, and then thereafter, you get pretty closely associated with certain people. Tucker Weston, Waiters Tanner, Randy Smoke, Eddie Parker, Harrison People, and on and on.
There's so many.
A great number of people. But they were active at about the same level as I was, and we were pretty closely associated. We helped each other. I learned from them, and perhaps they learned a little from me.
I think you've already sort of touched on this, but what, in your opinion now, is a major issue or issues facing medicine today?
I will blame it on cost. Cost is our major issue. And the control of that is, I believe, is going to completely change the way we practice medicine. We have to bring down costs. I don't see how the people stand it, even if they have insurance. A few years before I retired, my little secretary had a cesarean section, and that little tiny baby cost her around $5,000.
Yes.
Uncomplicated. In my time, I charged $100 for cesarean. Hospital might have been $65. The general practitioner who took care of might have charged $35, and that was the cost of that baby in my era. It's out of hand, it's out of control. Everyone concerned has contributed to it. Patient demand, physicians going from professionalism to business. Society has brought out demands, the lawyers have had their impact. It's a multifaceted problem.
Yes.
And I hope Hillary can find some solution.
I hope so. I hope so. Yeah,
If we could return to what I call the old values, we'd do better.
I'm sure of that. We always look back, but still there's a lot of old values that if we had today would be much better.
Yes, we think we know where we are today. We definitely know where we were yesterday.
Where we've been.
And we hope we know where we're going.
Yeah. Well, where do you think medicine's going? Are you optimistic about the profession of medicine?
Optimistic about the scientific improvements and developments, yes. Pessimistic about the human aspect, the soft, tender patient relationship, the caring physician, or the loyal patient. Concerned about those elements. But high tech is coming into place. I'll be afraid to go back into the operating room now, even the short time I've been out with the technical improvements since 1985, the changes in medicine. And I think they will continue.
Yeah. But it's just unbelievable how much change really goes on. It's almost daily. Almost daily.
Yes, and most changes are good. Some of them I disagree with. We've got a terrific problem in continuing to maintain life before and beyond man's normal lifespan.
Right.
We've got some big problems to handle. We've got the big problems of maintaining the quality of life for the elderly and our cost of medical care.
Those are very real, aren't they?
Nature's mighty good, and back in the days of practice, most of the times if you would follow the course set by nature in patterning your care, you came out better than if you tried to control some of nature's courses. And I think we're trying to do that now with some of these neonatal problems. I don't know that God's intended for all of them to live, but without scientific technology, they are living. And there's a lot of questions in the longevity of life. I have a living will exemplifying Mary Elizabeth and our desires in that respect. And be it come to that time, we expect them to be implemented, the living will.
Now, how do you spend most of your time right now? Just pursuing...
As I said, I'm pursuing the pleasures of life, and I'm so busy I wouldn't have time to see patients. I do a little hunting, a little fishing. I have a farm that I enjoy. I maintain a pleasant relationship with my old hospital. I'm on the Conway Hospital Foundation board. I maintain a good relationship with Coastal Carolina. Mary Elizabeth and I are honorary alumni, and I maintain a relationship there. I have activities with our Horry Georgetown Technical College.
Mm-hmm.
She and I are both honorary alumni there, and she's on the board of directors of the Tech Foundation. Even though I didn't finish from Conway High School, I'm on the board of directors of the Conway High School Educational Foundation. And being a trustee in my Presbyterian church, I'm active there. So I'm just as busy as I can be.
You wouldn't have time to practice now.
I really wouldn't. But most of them are pleasurable. There are very little problems, and I can do everything leisurely. All my life I worked with a clock and a timetable of meeting appointments. I try now, as I think I did with you. I didn't fix the time for this meeting. It's going to come when you want to.
Yeah.
But I'm enjoying it. But I still have some misgivings about some of the things I miss. I dream of operating rather frequently.
That's amazing, isn't it?
It is. It certainly is.
Now, I recall that I called up here one time several months ago to check up about coming up and having an appointment with you. And you had something awfully important going on. You were planning to go hunting that day, I believe.
That was important to me.
Of course it was.
Absolutely. I've forgotten which one it was, but I hope I got a duck or a dove or something.
Something.
But I do a little hunting, a little fishing. I had a little hunting club at my farm, which has been very pleasurable. And shortly after this meeting, I'm going down to just witness the meeting of Horry County Council and the City Council in some joint business. I'm thinking a little bit more about the civic activities of the town in which I live.
That's great.
In the past, doing active practice, 90%, 95% of my thinking capacity was patient care.
Yes.
Now I have that free capacity of thinking to think of other things. Mary Lewis sometimes says, you ought to chat other people's business and go back to practicing. But I'm enjoying whatever I'm doing now.
Well, now, is there anything else that you think you would like to add to this conversations?
I will probably think of something tomorrow or later.
Oh, sure.
But it's a pleasure for me to sit with you, reminisce a little bit, talk of old times. Now that I'm free of problem solving, like patient care, often Maryland's when I'll sit at the little breakfast table in the morning and think about, do you remember when? Remember so-and-so? Reflect on past events. We do that more now than in the past.
Right.
Reflect on where we've been, who we saw, what we did. Most of them are very pleasant.
Well, good. Well, I want to thank you for this interview. I think this will sort of conclude our interview today with Dr. Gilland here.
You're both kind to come up.
It's been such a pleasure talking to you, and I wish you the best of everything, and it's just great to see you again.
Lord, it's real nice.
Thank you.
We first met a good long number of years ago.
It's been a long time. Yeah.
I think you came by my office and we sat down and talked
Right,
about
exactly.
something. I guess it was about your specialty.
I believe it was.
At that time, we were looking to fill that specialty in Conway.
Yeah.
We were. You and I, you came by and we talked.
Now let me ask you one more question. Would you do all this all over again?
I wouldn't take anything in the world from where I have been, and neither would I take anything from where I am today.
That's great.
I would do it all over again.
That's,
I'd make some changes, but the overall course, no, I wouldn't change.
Wouldn't change for anything.
No. I never had a second choice. If I was the doctor, what would I be? I just never had a second choice. That was the way I thought. And it was lucky that I picked out medicine rather than something else. For to make a living and something you don't enjoy doing must be a terrible business ordeal.
That'd be terrible.
And the world has been good to me with my patients and financially, and we are now enjoying a comfortable life.
Well, that's good. Well, thank you again very much.
Thank you, Larry.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
Miss Green. You've been very